So, hi everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Injustice for All with Judge Joe Brown. How are you today, Judge?
I'm doing fine.
All right.
Not even slurping when I'm drinking this stuff.
So, we're not going to be messy this week. We may have to clean up some mess. A couple of things I want to touch on, and I want to start off with Fani Willis. And this is a sidebar, but it has to do with Fani Willis because now, if you remember, we've been talking about Fani Willis for over a year, and other people from Fulton County and in the state of Georgia have come on this platform. So what I decided to do is create a segment to where people in Georgia and Fulton County that's having a problem with their local officials, especially out of Fulton County, to come on and pre-record to share their story, right? And I'm going to upload it as an episode. And I'm calling it the Fulton County Corruption Podcast. And so I pre-recorded this week, and that's going to drop over the weekend. So I figure we could start off talking about Fani Willis and the latest update with her, because we do know next month she is supposed to go in front of the Georgia Senate committee to answer some questions. And this came out earlier this week as well, that Trump's DOJ zones in on Fani Willis taking a trip to the Bahamas after the 2024 reelection. And it says here that without naming Willis, President Donald Trump said she should be prosecuted in a social media post after it was revealed she took a trip to the Caribbean island. The U.S. Department of Justice is keeping the magnifying glass on Fulton County, Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis by scrutinizing her for taking a trip to the Bahamas after being reelected in 2024. The Trump administration's DOJ has been going after Willis ever since she brought charges up against Trump in the 2020 Georgia interference case. But once she was removed due to dequalification, things turned up a notch.
You want to know?
So I just want to say this one part here for purposes. Without naming Willis, President Donald Trump says she should be prosecuted, and her office, the district attorney, her office is saying that she attended a leadership training session with campaign funds covering expenses.
Okay, now there are some things that go on in the Bahamas that I got caught up in the middle of without any foreknowledge. There's some very deplorable things happening in the Bahamas. They have a thriving business in the banking system down in the Bahamian Islands because the Bahamian government allows people to set up trust funds in perpetuity. In America, you can't set anything up except for a life in being plus 21 years after that. But you can go down there and you can control the trust fund you set up for your descendants from now until whenever. So the Bahamian legal system is tied up by handling situations where they defend they're shielding the financial records of Americans from IRS and the federal government. One of the things that they have is corruption. And I saw some of it firsthand, all the way from prime minister down. So going over there at this time, considering the missing $10 million of Georgia money, 7.5 for catching up on prosecutions, 2 million for sex crimes matters, 500,000 or $500,000 for juvenile matters, totaling 10 that she's supposed to answer to this legislative committee in their state capital about that raises some questions, allegations. So it is what it is. And by the way, you need a grand jury. So I don't care what Trump is thinking or would like to do. If a grand jury doesn't go along with it, it's dead. And then, by the way, the U.S. Supreme Court just recently gave Mr. Trump another base hit when it said, since the Attorney General of the United States and the Justice Department are under his shield, he's the chief executive officer, and that's what he's in charge of. And all of these things are part of the executive branch of the U.S. government. He's in charge. He can talk to, consult, oversee all he wants. Nothing's wrong with it. So let's see if indictments come out of this, and I wouldn't be surprised because Fani Willis appears to represent that type of person who they like to accuse others of doing what they're doing because they understand it. And it's easy to put together a case when you are falsely accusing somebody of your own misdeeds. And that's the same thing we're discovering with Tish James up in New York, who went after Trump. And now we find out she's got accusations against her for doing the same thing.
Okay.
By the way, instead of just making this Georgia, why don't you just make it universal with the focus this time being on Georgia since it's topical? You know, don't forget the Chicago Red Bunch and what's going on up there in Chi-Town, and don't forget what's happening down here in Memphis, where the Democrats are going freak trying to oppose anybody and everything that goes counter to their false narrative.
Right. And so just to add on to the Fani Willis, I'm dropping 2 episodes this weekend with people talking about the corruption that's going on in Fulton County. And, you know, when we're talking about the Democrat Party, Fulton County is blue. It's all Democrat.
Sure, Memphis too. Shelby, well, not Shelby County, but Memphis.
Right. And it's all
a lot of blue too.
And listen, so me and you technically don't have a dog in this fight to a certain degree, but the problem is there are a lot of people who feel hopeless, as if, you know, their voices are not heard. They don't have the money, the power, the influence to vote or make a difference to get rid of, quote unquote, this corruption that's going on with these public officials. So, you know, I do appreciate you, and I'm going to give myself some credit highlighting what is going on, because this is not us kicking in the backs of Black politicians. It's really about, no matter what color you are, we need to start holding these politicians accountable.
Why do you have to put black in it anyway? It's just some crooks need to be kicked in their butts. Because that they happen to be black is an unfortunate thing.
Very unfortunate. But see, they're the ones that ride on black.
Yeah, but see, you walk into a convenience store, you know, you're on the way home, and you say, oh, I need to get a 6-pack of beer, you know, or some Cokes, or Pepsi, or whatever it may be, or whatever you're going to do, stop, get gas, and somebody holds the place up. Do you give a damn whether they're black, white, brown, red, yellow, and they got a gun in your face and say, let it hit the ground, it's going down?
No, but
well, in other words, you have criminals who are white collar criminals who are abusing the public trust, and or they've got an agenda that's poisonous to you. I don't particularly like children to be exploited as sexual objects by perverts. I don't like women I know being jeopardized because some pervert decides to say he identifies as female and walking in their bathrooms. I certainly don't want my granddaughter to be in a shower in a school where there's a pervert in there wandering around with his stuff hung out, trying to be naked and soap down. I don't like that. I don't like the idea that people are trying to spread this false rumor that the communications, news, and entertainment industries have been putting on us for the longest. And see, anytime they get away with this narrative and they throw it out there with just this place down in Fulton County, Georgia / Atlanta being the focus, or New York or Chicago, it's like the whole planet because of the way media works. So I don't like what they've been pushing for the last 50 years. I think it is dysfunctional, and I think it needs to stop because it's going nowhere but down.
Well, you're not liked because you were heavily criticizing Kamala Harris when she was running for
She's
president.
a hoe, and she's what you call a disgusting opportunist in the political system. She's a fake. She's lying about what she is, lying about what she's done. And most of her advances have come from questionable activities, allegedly. So I don't have a lot of people against me. I walked in a Target this week. All these people were looking at me and they were tapping each other on the arm. And then one guy started applauding. And then quickly, 15 or 20 of these customers are applauding. I thought, I'm looking around to see who they're applauding for. It's you, Judge. We appreciate what you've been saying and coming out to let us know what's going on.
I think you're
Now,
exaggerating.
I'm not exaggerating. I went in Happy Mexican here in Memphis, not too far from where I live, where a lot of people hang out for happy hour.
So was it Happy Mexican or was it Target?
It's called, no, it's a different place, Happy Mexican. I'm talking about this was the night before last. And all these people, more so than usual, want to come over for pictures and talk and shake hands and say thank you.
Well,
So
I want to
what's
speak.
happening is, look, they were pushing what No Kings was about, and they were talking about this big demonstration on I-240 where all of these people were over the overpass. Well, I got caught up in the traffic because the police were trying to keep control of things because they're worried about somebody throwing objects from the overpass down on the traffic. It was supposed to be a big turnout. I saw 5 people up there, and they had some ragged signs, and one of them was honk if you approve. And the traffic is at a crawl. One short honk, that's it. And everybody else is looking angry as they can be. So somebody's lying.
Well, I want to swing back.
By the way, they like you too for doing this. So I have run into, and it's an anecdotal thing, it's just a gestalt impression. I run into about 35 or 40 people who are positive for everyone that's neutral. I haven't run into anybody negative that's actually face to face with me. I hear this. Why are you doing so and so? I said, well, where did you get that from? Okay. And then I just got through talking to a reporter for a weekly newspaper who got fired because they reported honestly about what was going on out in the streets. And the individual, a black female who runs the place, is she's all the way on the far left. She's going to get in trouble for what she discharged this woman for. It was just wrong. So I'm listening to what I see
Right.
on TV and what I read, but that isn't necessarily the reality because what do we get? When you control the media, it's easy to pull off what that other Joseph said. Joseph Goebbels, Nazi minister of propaganda 80 some years ago. He said, tell a lie long enough and loud enough, and you can get anyone, including the liar, to believe it. And they've been telling a lot of lies for 50 years, getting the American public to buy into their glorification of dysfunction and their version of rather sick, degenerate viability. And
Yeah.
the rest of the public's not buying it. And I'll tell you something else. Somebody said, well, how come? I said, wait a minute. I said, I've been a minority my whole life, either a Native American or black. And I'll be damned if I'm going to be giving up the opportunity to be in an overwhelming majority of the American public, representing 94% of the public that doesn't buy into this crap, but just gets told falsely that they are, and they're beginning to wake up and say, wait a minute. I've been lied to. Now I'm beginning to see what it is, because they are doing something that's really crazy. They don't have a positive program. There's never anything they're offering that actually is viable or functional. They are just attacking Trump. They are attacking be dependent on yourself and independent of somebody taking care of you. Work hard, get ahead. That seems to be something that's evil. And that's not anybody's way that's successful anywhere on this planet Earth. I see just an ancillary thing right now. What is it? They just came up with some requirements that continue to get the benefits. You have to work, or at least try to work. What's wrong with that? Worked my whole life since I've been 13 years old. I had a paper route.
You did?
Yes. So, I mean, I've been working my whole life. So what's wrong with somebody being required to work to get the tax money that I'm contributing out there? And all you got to do is stay at home and have a good time and screw. I can understand somebody having a hard time, but when your whole life you haven't worked, and when your mama hadn't worked, your grandmama hadn't worked, your great grandmama hadn't worked, something's wrong. And unless you're going to declare you're physically or mentally disabled, then you need to get a job, or at least start preparing to have one. I'm tired of paying your way. And a lot of other people are too. And it's got nothing to do with racism or anything else. It's just a lot of people, black, white, brown, red, yellow, in the United States of America, understand how it works. You have to put out to get something out of it.
Which is why a lot of people are upset that the Biden administration had an open border, because these people are coming in and we're footing the bill for them to get a leg up here. They're getting free housing, free healthcare, free food, free education, everything free on our tax dollars, which is why the Democrats lost. They
Well,
lost.
look, I've got nothing against anybody being Hispanic. No habla español, muy bien.
But they weren't all Hispanic.
But you know what?
But let me just say this,
But
but they weren't all Hispanic. It was very diverse. It was from all people from all over the world coming through that border.
But here's what I'm saying. Follow the damn law. And the other thing is, crime is not supposed to pay. So we are telling people, break the law, come invade, sneak across the border, and we'll give you up to $5,000 a month. The taxpayers of the United States of America who are legitimately here pay for you.
So let me say
We'll
this.
give you free Medicare. And a whole lot of people are getting pissed about what they're really having to pay out of pocket to back up Medicare. And
Medicare, Medicaid.
No, Medicare.
Okay.
See, no, listen. Some places like Tennessee do not have Medicaid. Now, what happens is the primary thing is Medicare, which is under Social Security, and it costs a lot to pay for Medicare unless you're flat broke busted. Now, when you have to pay for the other stuff in order to get the extra benefits to take care of the 20%, that gets very costly. So here you are telling folk, we will give you free medical care. And other people only get the benefit of Medicaid as a 20% backup to Medicare. So we who have been here our whole lives, we who are legitimately here, been naturalized or whatever it may be, we pay taxes. And our taxes go into these funds that the far left, the blue side, the Democratic side, has been borrowing against to fund their little favorite freak, degenerate social programs. And then they tie up everything and shut down the funding and operation of a large percentage of the government because the Republicans won't agree to illegals getting a freebie up to $5,000 a month in taxpayer support and essentially free medical care that nobody else gets. See, they are lying about it because it's covered under the same act that deals with Medicare and Medicaid. The Democrats and the Democrat controlled communications industry in the Democrat controlled news industry is trying to let people be exposed to, forcibly expose people to a lie that if they hear often enough, they will accept as a reality, which is the Republicans are shutting down the government because they are against health care. No, we are not going to let that lie stay out there. The tale is that the Democratic Party wants to get political influence. So they have opened the borders. They have disregarded, and I'll say this because this is truth. They don't care that Al Qaeda, ISIS, Hamas, Iran, North Korea, and China get to walk in here with nobody checking them out, that you get these criminal cartels coming in here with nobody checking them out, that you get convicted murderers coming in here with nobody checking them out, convicted self-offenders, sex offenders, nobody checking them out, people who have incurable diseases coming in here, nobody's checking them out. And we're supposed to buy into this breach of national security because why? They can't come up with a good reason, so they just attack Trump, they attack MAGA, and they want to falsely lay the fault at the feet of the Republican Party, which it's not.
Let me insert this, speaking of that, attacking Trump, because US Senator John Fetterman, he is a Democrat out of Pennsylvania. He said his party lost the plot and the White House when their then leader Kamala Harris started calling President Trump a fascist. When Vice President Harris referred to Trump as a fascist, I knew absolutely we lost the plot at that point. If you call the president or someone like a fascist, you are effectively calling the people who are going to vote for him, then they must be fascist too, or they must support fascism and those things. And that is just not true. So, yeah. And then he went on to say, Kamala Harris, after being asked why other Democrats have been echoing her disturbingly comparing Trump to like Hitler and, Nazi leader Adolf Hitler, he goes on to say, I don't know why. And I've always refused to say that. So she started calling him a fascist, Hitler. And then you see the Jasmine Crockett, you see other Democrats, white, brown Democrats saying the same thing. AOC, calling him a racist, a fascist, Hitler, no kings, yada, yada, yada. And that is why they lost the House, lost the Senate, lost the White House. They have no power. They have no real agenda focus except for let's cause chaos in the streets against ICE. And they started recently, and I want to play this clip here real quick. They created a ICE tracker.
So you and me, we've been saying, hey, screw this, they're lying. They're the ones that are acting like fascists because they're the ones that are trying to restrict free speech, not just pornographic speech, not just obscene speech, but comprehensive ideas are not to be shared. and those get censored. That's what it's about when you're talking about censorship. The Fourth Amendment, when it comes to search and seizure, to hell with that. Right to remain silent. Fifth Amendment, to hell with that. They're talking about Kamala and Waltz boy was sitting there saying we need to look at the First Amendment because free speech just is dangerous. Well, it's worked for 230 years, and it is certainly no more dangerous than driving down a freeway at 70 miles an hour.
Yeah, so I just want to play this quick clip here. It says the Oversight Committee will be launching a master ICE tracker where we're going to be essentially tracking every single instance.
I shared this with the mayor. Over the course of the next couple of weeks, the Oversight Committee will be launching on their website a master ICE tracker where we're going to be essentially tracking every single instance that we can verify that the community will be able to send us information on. I shared this with the mayor.
So, and then Representative Jim Jordan says, shouldn't they be working on to open the government instead of doxing our brave ICE officers that are trying to keep you safe?
They've got a thing called the Patriot Act and Homeland Security Act, and they've got the world stage that I was alluding to a few moments ago that is filled with enemies, mortal enemies of the United States of America and its people. The same individuals that brought you 911 and bringing down the Twin Towers in an attempt to do in the Pentagon. They're out there. They're stronger and they are angrier. And we are concerned about that. And there is a body of law under Title 8, United States Criminal Code, sections 1324 et seq, and the mayor of Los Angeles, the governor of California, they're all in clear violation of those laws. They ought to be indicted, arrested, charged, and required to stand trial. Now, granted, they're presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, but there's certainly ample evidence to establish probable cause so that issue gets determined by a jury of their peers. Now, this is ridiculous. They are asking people to break the law. This whole thing with these demonstrations set up by no kings in terms of the alleged outpouring they claim is a lie. But remember, these are the same people that brought you the congressional hearings on January 6, 2020. And look what they're doing. They're not talking about 180 people who peacefully were invited into the Capitol building. They're not talking about horrible President Trump who wanted to bring out the National Guard to prevent any kind of occurrence of disorder. They're the ones that are rah-rah and come on out. We need more people. Let's show this. And they're the ones that are causing traffic jams. They're the ones that are disrupting public order. They're the ones that are causing disturbances. They're the ones that are hopeful of getting some kind of repeat of the violence under the BLM George Floyd nonsense. So what are you doing here? Who are we supposed to say is the one that's trying to set up a totalitarian thing? You Democrats, you socialists who want to get rid of the free enterprise aspect of the United States, you are just like another group of socialists, the National Socialist Workers' Party. The German acronym is Nazi, Nazi. So who are the totalitarian folk here? The ones that are trying to make sure the Bill of Rights is not subverted by what they call lawfare, the ones that are trying to restore law and order, are you guys over there in the blue, represented by a creature that is known as a jackass. So that's what you want us to buy into?
So I want to touch on a little bit of the government shutdown because this is day 23. So it says the Senate on Thursday today rejected a Republican-backed bill to pay some federal workers who are working through the government shutdown as the funding fight rolls into day 23. The bill, known as the Shutdown Fairness Act and sponsored by Senator Ron Johnson, a Republican out of Wisconsin, would have paid employees such as air traffic controllers, military workers, border patrol agents, and other so-called essential workers forced to work during the shutdown. The bill created a tough spot for Senate Democrats as Americans call for the end of the shutdown. But Democrat leaders have argued the Trump administration shouldn't get to decide which employees are essential and not, and which should be paid. Democrats push for a countermeasure to try to pay all federal workers, but Republican-controlled Senate did not take up the proposal. For the 12th time on Wednesday, Senate Democrats blocked Republicans' short-term funding bill to reopen the government. Democrats have demanded that extending expiring subsidies in the Affordable Care Act and reversing Republican Medicaid cuts be included in legislation to end the shutdown.
Yeah, and the real deal is what's about what it's about is the Medicaid aspects and the whole 9 yards under the Affordable Care Act include freebie medical care for people who shouldn't be here, who should be sent back where they came from, and up to $5,000 a month of tax dollars going to people who are illegally here. Now, that's what the issue is. The Democrats say we are not going to compromise. So they're lying through their little filthy fascist teeth when they say that the Republicans are doing some kind of wrong. Republicans say, hey, we need TSA, air traffic controllers. Everybody flies. If you shut down the airlines, you really close down the country. You're talking about the military, Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, Hamas, ISIS, Al Qaeda. They don't care about this. If you let the military of the United States get shut down, that's very bad. So this is a matter of national security here. This is a matter of transportation that is absolutely necessary to this United States of America functioning at all. And these clowns don't want to pay these and say, you have no right to say these essentials that any reasonably intelligent person would call that. You can't make this determination. We say these illegals are more important. So we're going to say we're going to shut everything down and let everybody suffer because we want these guys who will stuff the voting rolls or be counted in a census so we get more representatives in our little California, New York, Illinois, etc., so we can push our little sick agenda on you. And by the way, we can't really explain it. It's just all about evil Trump, evil Republicans, evil MAGA, evil American people who in a landslide situation delivered the Electoral College and the popular vote to these other guys who are saying we're going to stop this. So, wowee whoopee, that really comes across like that's logical, reasonable, and rational? Hell no. It sounds like the kind of stuff that fascist totalitarianism would be trying to push on a free republic. Now, that's what it sounds like, and I challenge all the rest of them. I went to UCLA where that little fascist mayor Bass is from, Los Angeles, California. UCLA. My major was political science. That was my declared major. I had other minors, and I'm a historian. I've been doing this for a long time. I studied propaganda at UCLA for a whole year under some experts in the subject, or at least one internationally recognized expert in the subject. I recognize what they are doing right now which is classic propaganda. And by the way, there's a book out there. It's called The 48 Real Rules of Power. You can order it through Amazon as an ebook. Read it. You'll see that what the Democratic Party is doing is taking some pages out of that book, trying to run a game on the rest of us.
Okay.
That was a rant, I guess people would call it, but all I'm doing is being the professor. I've seen this, watched it develop over the course of a half century. And what I see and what I hear, I don't forget. Sometimes that's not very much, well, sometimes that's not a good thing because you might want to forget something. I can't.
So I want to bring up Al Sharpton.
Idiot chicken jaw Sharpton. He likes his fried chicken. And remember that New York Post article that said about him on the front page?
I don't remember.
They said he was an informant and they exposed him. That's been out there for a long time.
Yeah, so it's resurfacing again. It's going viral again. It says declassified files reignite debate over Reverend Al Sharpton's 1980s FBI role. Declassified documents from the 1980s show Reverend Al Sharpton served as confidential informant number 7 for the FBI, wearing a wire to help convict GOV's crime family members and music industry figures involved in exploitation. Sharpton acknowledges the cooperation, but describes it as a coerced assistance to protect Black artists, rejecting the informant label amid claims he also targeted Black leaders. Recent discussions on X linked to FBI Director Kash Patel's declassifications highlight persistent distrust in institutions and debates about Sharpton's civil rights legacy.
What have I been warning about for years? I say all of these calls for unity sound good, but before you unify with somebody, be careful to discover whether or not they are a snake, because that destroyed what we were doing 50 years ago when it turned out that so many of these people you were unifying with were actually what? Informants, pimps, and hustlers who pimped the movement, as we call it, or sold it out or told it out.
So I'm going to play this clip here real quick.
Reverend Al Sharpton has come clean about his secret past as a government informant. CBS 2's Dave Carlin tells us the activist admitted to helping the FBI bring down some of New York's most wanted.
I was not and am not a rat.
The Reverend Al Sharpton identified as confidential informant CI7, now admitting he wore a wire for the FBI. He helped the government go after boxing promoter Don King, music executives, and mobsters, including Vincent the Chin Gigante, who famously wore his robe and pajamas in public.
I was cooperating.
Sources say that cooperation likely started after he was nabbed in a drug sting caught on video. Helping the feds may have helped him. But Sharpton says he went to them because members of the mob wanted him dead.
They were threatening to kill me.
Sharpton is kicking off his National Action Network convention this week with headliners President Obama and Mayor de Blasio, who defended Sharpton.
I think he has done a lot of good for the city of New York and for this country.
Retired NYPD Detective Sergeant Joseph Jackalone says unmasking any confidential informant troubles him.
You never want this because we need people to help cooperate, so this is an unfortunate incident.
Sharpton said he has no regrets. He'd do it all again. Dave Carlin, CBS 2 News.
Translation: when the police detectives start saying, I think it's a bad policy to expose confidential informants, that condemns him. That verifies that the stories of him being Reverend Rat are true. And you noticed he used the word. And one other thing I want to bring to the fore. What did Malcolm X say a long, long time ago? Quote, a processed head equals a processed mind. And you saw Reverend Chicken Jaws Al, Reverend Rat, with his processed gassed head, the classic one. I guess he hung around James Brown so much he had to copy him. But like Malcolm X, St. Malcolm said, a processed head equals a processed mind. And we saw how processed Al Sharpton's head was, and that's indicative of how processed his mind is still. And he's still, even though it's gray, is still processed. You see it hanging down because he's just as nappy headed as anybody can get until he got his hair fried, dyed, and laid slightly to the side.
Unpause this. What were you saying?
Was last talking about Al Sharpton and his processed head being very indicative of a current processed mind. And you might want to worry about how he changed from a pariah who spread a lot of false information from, let's say, the false story of a certain young black girl getting raped by a team of white athletes, which turned out to be false, to all sorts of weird tales, and him being a preacher who has never had a pulpit, no church. And now we find out he was a confidential informant that the police still want to protect because they don't want to discourage it. He was in fear of his life, but, you know, he doesn't seem to value courage. And he runs around with all of the irresponsible pimp stuff that we can imagine. So how wealthy has he gotten because of his little game that is promoted by the same communications, entertainment, and news industry that pushes the Democratic Party thing? And remember, he used to be anti-Democrat and very much pro-Donald Trump when he used to hang around with him, sniffing up to see if he could get some financing. It's like he was sniffing up to the folk that I guess provided the nose candy or whatever the drug was he got caught up in being implicated in, that induced him to become a confidential informant so that he did not get prosecuted.